All right, we're about to dig into one of America's oldest, spookiest mysteries. But what if I told you that everything you think you know about the lost colony of Roanoke is wrong?
You know the story, right? The lost colony of Roanoke. An entire settlement of people who just disappeared into thin air. It's a ghost story we've been telling for centuries. But the version of that story you've heard, well, it's not even close to the whole picture. Because here's the thing. The one man who actually found the empty colony, Governor John White, he didn't see a mystery at all. When he saw the word CROATOAN carved into that post, he wasn't scared. He was relieved. For him, it was a message, clear as day, that his family and his people were safe with their allies.
And that just flips the whole script, doesn't it? The question stops being, where did they vanish? And it becomes something way more urgent, why did they have to leave in the first place? And the answer? Well, it's not ghosts. It's a story of bad decisions, terrible timing, and one absolutely catastrophic act of nature.
So first up, we need to peel back all those layers of myth and legend to get to what was really going on.
Yeah, that whole spooky lost colony ghost story, it's a much, much later invention. It's a fantastic story, for sure, great for tourism and campfire tales, but it completely papers over a much grittier and more complex reality of desperation, failure, and a very clever strategy for survival.
The thing is, this colony was in trouble from the get-go. The seeds of its failure were planted years before those 117 men, women, and children even stepped on the boat.
You have to understand, the first English expedition back in 1585, that wasn't families. That was a military outfit, a bunch of soldiers led by a guy named Ralph Lane. And when they started running out of food, they demanded it from the local Algonquin people. Tensions exploded, and Lane's men ended up murdering the local chief, Wingina, an act of unbelievable brutality that basically poisoned the well for any English people who would follow. So on top of landing in a place where they were already hated, the 1587 colonists walked straight into a full-blown environmental catastrophe, an invisible enemy that would make their already impossible situation, well, even more impossible.
And this invisible enemy, it can really be summed up by one single devastating number. This is where science gives us the smoking gun. By studying the rings of ancient cypress trees in the area, scientists figured out that the colonists arrived at the absolute peak of the worst growing season drought in 800 years. 800 years. The crops would have failed. The local tribes' crops would have failed. Suddenly, everyone was starving, and any hope for peaceful trade turned into a desperate fight for survival.
So, facing starvation and surrounded by enemies, the colonists had to make a choice. And thankfully for us, they left behind two very clear clues about their survival plan.
Let's be clear, these were not cryptic signs left by ghosts. This was a forwarding address. This was Plan A and Plan B, telling John White exactly where they were headed. So Plan A was the most obvious one. Head south to what's now Hatteras Island. This was the home of the CROATOAN people, their only real allies in the entire region. It was the safest, most logical place you could possibly go for help. And get this, modern archaeology on Hatteras has found stunning evidence to back this up. We're talking English sword handles and gun parts mixed right in with Native American pottery from that exact time period. They've even found buckets of hammer scale. That's the waste material from a blacksmith's forge. The local tribes didn't do blacksmithing. This is proof that English craftsmen weren't just visiting, they were living there, working there, integrating into the community.
But what about that second clue? The plan to move inland? For over 400 years, that was a total dead end, until a secret was found, hidden in plain sight, on a map drawn by John White himself. It's an incredible story. In 2012, researchers were using special imaging tech on White's map of the area, and they noticed a little paper patch. So they looked underneath it, and there it was, a tiny hidden symbol for a fort, located almost exactly 50 miles inland, right where the colonists said they might go. Of course, archaeologists raced to that spot, now called Site X, and what did they start finding? Not weapons, not trade goods, but bits of English pottery, the kind of stuff you'd find in a family's kitchen. It all points to a small, separate group of colonists who tried to follow that backup plan and make it on their own.
So, here's the crucial point. These two sets of evidence, Hatteras and Site X, they're not contradictory. They're telling the same story. The colony didn't just vanish, it split up to survive. A big group likely went to Hatteras to join their allies, while a smaller splinter group tried their luck inland.
And this brings us to a final, much more complicated verdict on what happened to the people of Roanoke. They weren't lost. They were strategic.
So the most likely scenario looks exactly like this. That catastrophic drought hits, making life on Roanoke impossible. To maximize their chances, they split up. The majority move in with the CROATOAN on Hatteras and begin to assimilate. But that smaller group that moved inland, their isolation made them incredibly vulnerable.
And this is where the story takes its most tragic turn. Decades later, when the English founded Jamestown, they heard a chilling account. The powerful Chief Powhatan, yes, that Powhatan, Pocahontas' father, confessed that he himself had ordered the slaughter of a group of English survivors living inland. From his perspective, it was a political move. He couldn't risk this group of seasoned English settlers allying with the new arrivals at Jamestown and challenging his power.
So you see, the story of Roanoke isn't a ghost story. It's a deeply human story of survival, adaptation, and ultimately, tragedy. These people weren't lost to some supernatural mystery. They were abandoned by their own country and forced to make impossible choices in an impossible situation. The real question isn't if they survived after leaving Roanoke, but for how long, and in the end, who did they become? No longer English, but perhaps for a time, CROATOAN.